And that is what it has, the white face that opens up to reveal the Indian child inside. So, Mr. Speaker, I know my time is up, but I just want to recognize the resilience of the Indigenous communities of this country.
The honourable member will have 7 minutes to finish her or terminate her presentation when we resume after question period. Statements by members, déclaration de député, l'honorable député de Pierre.
The honourable member for Pierre Boucher, les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, we found out today that the National Art Gallery of Canada was going to cancel the sale of its Marc Chagall painting that was going to be used to buy a Quebec painting. The Bloc Québécois was the only party in Ottawa that asked that the Saint-Jérôme painting by Jacques-Louis David remain in Quebec. The Minister of Heritage, who is from Quebec, did not live up to her responsibilities and went to hide behind the pseudo-independence of the museum in order not to act. This time, this story is going to end well. Federal institutions were not able to trade away Quebec's cultural heritage. But let's not be naive. As long as Quebec is not a country, Canada's system will continue to work against us.
The honourable member for Mississauga-Streetsville.
Mr. Speaker, small and medium-sized businesses are the backbone of the Canadian economy, and today it is my pleasure to recognize one of them. Wilson International Limited started in 1918 under the vision and leadership of William Wilson as a customs brokerage and logistics company. 100 years later, today, at the helm of the company is the great-grandchild of its founder, Chairman and CEO Peter Wilson. Headquartered in my riding, Wilson International Limited not only continues to be a market leader and quality employer across the country, but has deep-rooted community engagement. Mr. Speaker, I want to express my gratitude to Peter Wilson and his entire team and family. Congratulations on your centenary. I wish you another successful 100 years.
The honourable member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Happy anniversary to the Plessisville Maple Festival. The spring is here, the signs are unmistakable, the sun has returned, and the sap is flowing, which means it's time to visit a sugar shack. I invite all of my colleagues and Canadians to visit us in the maple capital of the world for the 60th edition of the Plessisville Maple Festival. Over 8,000 people met on the grounds of the Saint-Edouard School in 1959 for its first edition 60 years ago today. It was April 26th, and with all due respect to my colleagues who are proud of their maples, Mégantic-l'Érable is where the best syrup is made and the best festival is held. Over the next 2 weeks, the tradition will go on. There will be a parade at night, syrup tastings, lawn tractor rides, of maple pig roast, dancing, and above all, a lot of taffy. Our maple water is the purest, our syrup is the most golden, our taffy the tastiest. But the real secret of the success of the Maple Festival for the last 60 years is the volunteers. This year, the president, Nathalie Bouffard, and her team await you in Plessisville, the true maple capital of the world. Have a great festival.
The honourable member for Scarborough Rouge Park.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to remember Skandaraj Navaratnam, Selim Essen, Abdul Basir Faizi, Majid Kehan, Andrew Kinsman, Dean Lisovic, Sarush Mahmoodi, and Krishna Kumar Kanagaratnam. These men were murdered by a brutal serial killer. Many of these men are racialized members of the LGBTQ community and represent some of the most vulnerable in our society with multiple intersectionalities. Krishna Kumar was a refugee who came on the MV Sun-Sea, was forced to go underground with the fear of being deported to Sri Lanka. As a society, we failed all of these men. I would like to recognize the tireless advocacy of groups like ASAP, Alliance for South Asians Aid Prevention, its Executive Director, Haran Vijayanathan, 519 Community Center, and others who have been working day and night to seek justice and accountability. My heart grieves with the families and loved ones of these men and the LGBTQ community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Hamilton Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, on April 28th, we recognize workers who have been killed or injured on the job. The day of mourning created by the Canadian Labour Congress in 1984 and officially recognized by the House of Commons in 1991 through an NDP-sponsored bill is recognized in many communities across Canada. As a steelworker, I am proud to have been part of that campaign that resulted in changes to the criminal code in 2003 to protect workers. in what became known as the Westray Law. 26 years ago, an explosion rocked the Westray mine in Nova Scotia, killing 26 workers and forever scarring the workers' families and the surrounding communities. Health and safety is still a big problem in Canada, as 1,000 Canadian workers are killed each year. Many of these deaths are preventable. In 15 years since the Westray Law was passed, only one person has been convicted under this law. That is not good enough. In memory of all those lost each year, I call on this government to stop the killing and enforce the law.
The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to Jim Nuttall, a community hero in Newmarket Aurora. Mr. Nuttall passed away peacefully on April 16th at the age of 84. He is survived by his sister Mary, his nephew Jonas, and his niece Nicole. Jim was a pillar of Newmarket, always lending a helping hand to improve the lives of others. He embodied the spirit of volunteerism that is at the core of our town and dedicated his life to our community and to our country. Jim was a Scoutmaster for 60 years, a lifetime member of the Salvation Army, recipient of the Diamond Jubilee Medal and the Canada 150 Medal for Volunteer Service. In 1995, he was honored as Newmarket's Citizen of the Year, and in 2012 was the Senior Citizen of the Year for Ontario. Jim loved Newmarket, and Newmarket loved Jim. He helped countless people, and his legacy will live on in all of us. Jim, you will be missed. Rest in peace.
The honourable member for Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
Mr. Speaker, Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia touch so many families from coast to coast to coast. It does not discriminate. Last year, I was proud to stand in this House and declare that my office had been recognized as the first dementia-friendly constituency office in Canada. With the help of our local Alzheimer's Society, we received training to help our staff to understand dementia and to feel more confident when offering assistance to those who are living with dementia and their caregivers. Today, I'm pleased to share that our local Alzheimer's Society in Cornwall has received a grant which will allow them to expand on the success of the pilot program. I'm also honored to announce and to welcome my colleague and friend, the Honourable Member from Milton, along with her husband Bruce, to Cornwall to shed more light on how we can grow stronger together understanding Alzheimer's disease. I'd like to invite anyone interested in Alzheimer's disease to the Ramada Hotel in Cornwall at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, May the 8th for this wonderful free event. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Nipissing-Temiskaming.
Mr. Speaker, Jim Marmino was a good friend and a volunteer extraordinaire. He was always there to help his community, his neighbors, his friends, his family. As a former boxer, many of us knew him as Champ, and he was a champion of many causes, whether it was coaching sports at West Fair Secondary School, where he was a teacher, setting up an event at the DeVita Club, supporting Nipissing University, Alzheimer's awareness, the Nipissing Serenity Hospice, and many more. Jim was always there to help. Jim's passion and love for his community was an inspiration. He was always looking for more ways to make North Bay a caring, supportive place for youth, families, and seniors. He was a true friend to all who knew him. As the Italian poet Dante Alighieri said, non potremmo essere perfetti senza una vita senza amici, meaning we can't have a perfect life without friends. And Jim, you were the perfect friend. To his wife Kathy and the Marmino family, thank you for sharing Jim with us. He will be missed and never forgotten.
The honourable member for Saint-Laurent.
Made advancing gender equality and women's empowerment a central theme of Canada's G7 presidency. This week, Canada hosted the Women's 7 Summit, bringing together feminist leaders and experts from Canada, all G7 countries, the EU, and the Global South to discuss and form policy recommendations to help advance gender equality globally. Monsieur le Président, les femmes...
Women have been at the forefront of innovative solutions that have been able to move forward significant global challenges. By reinforcing women's efforts, we reinforce the economy around the world. We thank the W7 Council as well as the Gender Equality Advisory Council, co-presided by Ambassador Isabel Udon and Melinda Gates. Their leadership allows us to raise the bar and find creative solutions to promote gender equality throughout the world. And G7.
Honourable Member for Simcoe Grey.
Mr. Speaker, it is with great sadness that I rise today to pay tribute to a wonderful woman from Simcoe Grey. Hilda Noble was an amazing person, the kind of person that brought a smile to your face every time you met her. She and Wayne, her husband of 30 years, were active in the business community through Noble Insurance, a well-respected firm. She was known best for her charitable work, especially in her home community of Collingwood. She was a life member of the Collingwood General and Marine Hospital Auxiliary and past president of the Canadian Cancer Society. She fundraised for cancer research for decades and was co-chair of the Breast Cancer Support Group. She loved the arts and was a board member for the Blue Mountain Foundation for the Arts for over 40 years. She was instrumental in raising money for Crime Stoppers. This woman did it all. Mr. Speaker, Hilda was a kind, generous, and loving woman. I'm honored to have known her. She will be missed dearly by her husband, her family, and our entire community.
The Honourable Member for Guelph.
Mr. Speaker, climate change is undoubtedly the defining issue of our age. With our collective leadership determining the future of the planet and the well-being of generations to come. Fortunately, Canada is leading by taking action to reduce our greenhouse gases while also appreciating the vast business opportunities that lie ahead in the clean technology economy. That's why I'm happy to share with this House that the City of Guelph received the Globe Climate Leadership Award at the Globe Forum in Vancouver. The Royal City, Guelph, once again showcased its true innovative spirit and forward-looking leadership by winning the large Municipal Trailblazer Award. Big congratulations to the entire Guelph community for this prestigious recognition and our commitment to environmental leadership. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Spadina Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, as members of Parliament, part of what binds us is our approach to home. We share being away from home, and we share the pride we have in our hometowns. What we share in this House is, in some sense, not being at home. It's a strange kind of loneliness. But when tragedy strikes close to our home, as it did in my hometown, Toronto, this week, it brings a kind of sense of helplessness when you're far, far away. But what's brought me home this week as I watched from a distance were the faces and names of those who were hurt and of those who helped. The names and accents of those who didn't walk away when strangers needed care, and the backgrounds of those who were on duty who responded with such clarity. The chorus of diverse voices brought me home and made our home, my home, Toronto, safe again. But not every soul is safe yet. Some have been lost. Many have been wounded, and some are still afraid. Let me tell you, you are not alone. All of us will help you heal. Yonge Street is Toronto, and Toronto is young and strong.
You're here. Way to go, Adam.
You're here. The Honourable Member for Dauphin, Swan River, Neepawa.
You're here.
Mr. Speaker, spring may have sprung in Manitoba, but the whiteout is still going strong. After our Winnipeg Jets tamed the Wild in round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs, we're on to round 2. Mr. Speaker, I can guarantee you that the President Trophy-winning Nashville Predators are terrified of the firepower our Winnipeg Jets are about to rain down upon them. In round 2, the Predators will become the prey. After the painful departure of the original Jets in 1996, the return of our beloved Jets has energized our province. All of Manitoba is buzzing in support of our team. After the anticipated early exit of the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Jets become the only Canadian team in the hunt. Mr. Speaker, I encourage all Canadians to jump on the bandwagon of Canada's team and join the whiteout as our Jets fight to win Lord Stanley. Say it with me now. Go, Jets, go! Go, Jets, go!
Go, Jets, go! Go, Jets, go!
Honourable Member for Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to mark World Immunization Week. This week, organizations and individuals around the world come together to highlight the work needed to ensure that each and every person is protected from vaccine-preventable diseases. Je suis fier de dire que
I am proud to say that immunization and global health remain at the heart of Canadian development efforts. Canada supports Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, to facilitate the immunization of over 500 million children. To this day, over 7 million lives have been saved. Our country also contributes to the elimination of maternal and neonatal tetanus and to the Global Polio Eradication Initiative.
addition to global immunization efforts saves lives, Mr. Speaker. Vaccines save lives here in Canada too. Vaccines are safe, they work, and they are vital to public health. World Immunization Week is a great opportunity to remind loved ones to make vaccines a priority and to ensure that vaccinations are up to date. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Hochelaga. Mr. Speaker, Saturday, April 28th, we will mark the International Day of commemorating the death and injury of workers in the workplace. Started in 1996 in all four corners of the world, initiated by the labor movement, this day is intended to pay tribute to victims of occupational injury and illness. In 2003, at the request of the labor movement, the World Labor Organization started to participate in the April 28th commemoration and honor working men and women who have died or been injured in the performance of their duties. I invite all elected officials in this House to join me in marking this day, in honoring victims and offering support to workers' families. I will conclude by quoting Michel Chartrand, who reminded with his legendary eloquence the asbestos strikers that we work to earn a living, not to lose one. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chasse les échemins Lévis.
Stephen. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, today we're observing the International Day of commemorating the death and injury of workers in the workplace. We pay tribute to all workers who have died or been injured while performing their duties.
Condolences to the families who have lost a loved one and to the families dealing with the aftermath of a workplace injury or illness. Overseeing the employment and labor file on our side, I want to stress that we must all continue to work to seek solutions that will make our workplaces safer across this country. Remembering is important, but the way to honor the workers and their ailing families is to take action. Monsieur le Président, travaillons tous ensemble.
Mr. Speaker, let us all work together to create and maintain safe workplaces all throughout Canada.
The Honourable Member for Niagara Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on April 28th, we mark the National Day of Mourning to acknowledge and be mindful of the impacts of deaths in the workplace and on the families left behind. Mr. Speaker, throughout our history in Niagara, we have unfortunately experienced many workplace injuries and fatalities. Just 2 generations ago, 137 workers from around the world perished while building the Welland Canal, the youngest being only 15 years of age. These were the people, Mr. Speaker, that built our country. Immigrants from Ireland, Hungary, Poland, Italy, and more. Descendants and citizens will gather at monuments in the cities of Port Colborne, Welland, Thorold, St. Catharines this coming Saturday. Monuments are often inscribed with the words, "Fight for the living, mourn for the dead." Mr. Speaker, even one workplace death is one too many. Let us think about this as we mark this National Day of Mourning. It is more than a day of remembrance, Mr. Speaker. It is a day when we reaffirm our commitment to all that we can prevent, as well as ensure that safety is amongst our workplace well into the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Suite aux discussions entre les représentants.
Following discussions among all the parties in the House, I believe that there is consent to observe a moment of silence in order to commemorate the National Day of Mourning and to honor the memory of workers killed or injured at work. I now invite honourable members to rise.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Yesterday we saw the hypocrisy and deception of this Prime Minister in full view when he stood and defended his government's funding of students to protest the Trans Mountain Pipeline. The Liberals are completely two-faced. They do not support Canada's oil and gas sector. Mr. Speaker, just how many organizations are receiving taxpayers' dollars to protest or lobby the Trans Mountain Pipeline or any other Canadian energy sector projects? How many?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we have been very clear with Canadians. We will build this pipeline. We know that the environment and the economy go hand in hand, and that is the approach we are taking. Funding should never go to pay for work that seeks to remove Canadians' hard-fought rights. Voicing opposition over an energy project and putting kids to work distributing graphic flyers of aborted fetuses, like the Centre for Bioethical Reform did, are not the same thing. This is about protecting Canadians' rights, such as women's rights, something our government will do regardless of what the opposition says.
Honourable Opposition House Leader. Order.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it should come as no surprise that protesting and trying to shut down our energy sector, which is what we're talking about, Minister of Natural Resources, falls completely in line with the Liberal values. Liberal members like the one from Vancouver Quadra and Burnaby North Seymour speak for much of their Liberal caucus when they oppose Trans Mountain, and the Prime Minister himself keeps saying how sorry he is he can't shut down our energy sector fast enough. The Liberals are moving farther and farther to the left. Why don't they just admit they want to shut down the entire Canadian energy sector?
I remind the Honourable Opposition House Leader to direct her comments to the Chair, the Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
It's okay, Mr. Speaker. I knew she was talking to me. And by our own estimates in the Department of Natural Resources, there are approximately 140 oil and gas projects under construction or planned in the next 10 years worth an estimated $400 billion in capital expenditure. When you consider the whole energy sector, including electricity, that number is nearly $530 billion. We support the energy sector in Canada. We wish the
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and the Liberals have managed to kill Energy East, Northern Gateway, and now they're paying students to protest Kinder Morgan. So, Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Natural Resources Minister. Does he agree that students should be paid on the public dime to protest Canadian natural resources and projects that go along with them? And if he is opposed to it, will he stand up to the Prime Minister and say that the funding of paid protesters is wrong?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
But, Mr. Speaker, the Harper government supported the very same groups. As a matter of fact, the Harper government gave twice as much to the very same groups. So,
Order. I'm having trouble hearing the answer. I need to hear both the questions and the answers. I have no trouble hearing the question. Honourable Minister of Natural Resources, a few more seconds.
Mr. Speaker, in addition to the jobs that the member has referred to, also there will be jobs going to the Alberta Oil and Gas Orphan Abandonment and Reclamation Association, the G-Force Oilfield Services in Lakeland, the Dean Smith Oilfield Contract.
I'm afraid those seconds are now gone. The Honourable Député de Richmond-Athabasca.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, the energy sector represents 740,000 jobs across Canada. The Kinder Morgan project will have a significant impact on our country. It will create 15,000 new jobs during its construction and over 37,000 more jobs over the next 20 years. Meanwhile, what is the Liberal government doing? Funding groups that want to destroy our energy sector, and they're doing it with taxpayer money. My question is simple. When will the Prime Minister stand up for hardworking Canadians in the natural resource sector? The Honourable Minister.
I have the pleasure of joining the Prime Minister and the Minister of Infrastructure in Fort McMurray just 2 weeks ago, doing exactly what the Honourable Member wants us to do. And I can make the same arguments that the Honourable Member has made about the jobs created, about getting a better price for our oil, about expanding our export markets, but I'd like to hear members opposite talk about the Ocean Protection Plan. I would like to hear from members opposite talking about world-class marine response. Why can't they think about those two things and put one paragraph together?
The Honourable Member for Richmond North Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, the Minister is being hypocritical. Canada has the strictest environmental standards in the world when it comes to natural resource development. Our resource development accounts for 11% of our GDP. The Trans Mountain Project would be worth $46.7 billion in tax income over 20 years, money that could be used to fund social programs. And the Prime Minister would rather buy resources from foreign countries instead of supporting our energy workers in Canada. When will the Prime Minister stand up and be a real leader and protect our economy? The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
That the member opposite has actually said that he thinks that the environment is important. That's some progress. Now why don't we talk about Indigenous consultation? Why was it necessary for this government to add many months of consultation with Indigenous communities? Because the Harper government failed. They were told that they had failed by the Federal Court of Appeal, so we had a choice. Repeat their failure or install a better process. We did the sensible thing and established a better process.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Neigette-Témiscouata-Lévesque.
Let's talk about Indigenous consultations. In late October 2016, weeks before the pipeline's public approval, Assistant Deputy Minister Erin O'Gorman of the Department of Natural Resources instructed her staff to, and I quote, give Cabinet a legally sound basis for saying yes to Kinder Morgan's pipeline. But only minutes before, federal First Nation representatives were assured by federal officials that the government hadn't made a decision on the pipeline. None of the 6 organizations that were present actually denied that O'Gorman gave those instructions. Is the minister denying it?
The Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure, as the honourable member knows, this was historic consultation with Indigenous peoples. And let me remind him, we appointed a ministerial panel, which, by the way, included a former NDP Premier of Yukon, and they heard from 650 Canadians at 44 public meetings in Alberta and in British Columbia, 20,000 email submissions, online questionnaire received over 35,000 responses. This project was subject to the most exhaustive...
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Neigette-Témiscouata-Lévesque.
Consultations, they call it deceptive consultations. The deux choses...
One of these things must be true. Either the minister is complicit in this charade, or he doesn't know what's going on in his own department. His own ADM, Erin O'Gorman, ordered staff to create a legal argument that would let Cabinet approve the Kinder Morgan project, while officials were assuring First Nations that no decision had been made. I am not making this up. The media is not making this up. There are internal documents obtained through an access to information request that say so. Does the minister still deny it? The Honourable Minister.
Literally dozens of access to information requests have come into all departments every day, and they're available for the Canadian public to look at. As a matter of fact, if you want to go up into the National Research, the NRCan website, you will see literally thousands of emails and opinions that have been offered. So why wouldn't the honourable member just assess what was actually done? rather than what he is alleging was said. And he will know that this was the most exhaustive consultation on pipelines in
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's symbolic gestures and words about gender equality are nice, but they're not enough. We're still waiting for a pay equity law, and it's 2018. Many women's groups are here for the G7, and they seize the opportunity to remind the government that it isn't doing enough to reach gender equality or to protect vulnerable women. The Prime Minister said he wanted to set an example at the summit. But what's his plan? How can he convince his G7 counterparts to adopt feminist policies when his own credibility is in doubt? The Honourable Minister of Labour.
Mr. Speaker, our government understands that we can't move forward when half of us are being held back, and that's why we've made gender equality a priority. With Budget 2018, we're taking leadership to address the gender wage gap, to institute proactive pay equity legislation, to enhance parental leave options, to tackle gender-based violence and harassment, to introduce a new entrepreneurship strategy for women, to invest in the sustainability of grassroots organizations that advocate on behalf of women, and so much more, Mr. Speaker. So this is a government that takes gender equality extremely seriously and puts our money where our mouth is.
Honourable Member for Churchill-Kiwatanook-Askey.
Mr. Speaker, we have heard that the attack in Toronto may have been inspired by the misogynistic and hateful movement incels. We must acknowledge that attacks from these groups are a form of violence rooted in misogyny. We must believe women and end the hate that they face on and offline. So saying you're a feminist is simply not enough. We must take action. The Special Rapporteur for the UN said that this government's fragmented approach to gender-based violence is not working. The Prime Minister is all words. Where is the concrete plan with resources to end gender-based violence in Canada?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, this is a profoundly serious issue. I would note that in the last two budgets, there have been specific increases in resources from the Government of Canada to tackle problems of exactly this kind. I also had the opportunity at the beginning of this week to discuss this issue with G7 security ministers with a view to making sure that those who provide communication services are aware of their responsibilities to work with government and to work with civil society to bring that foul and vile material off the internet.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
The good news is that the government has performed a calculation on the cost of the carbon tax to the average family. Further good news, they've released that document to me. The bad news is all the
Order. The Honourable Member knows it's one thing to read something, it's another to use something as a prop, and that's not referring to notes. The Honourable Member for Carleton has the floor. I'm sure he'll continue without props.
Well, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to this government's memos, I can understand why you might mistaken them for props.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, well, I thought everything had already been said about Phoenix, but no. After 2,000 grievances, we're now facing a very important judgment from the Superior Court of Quebec that would allow some of the employees affected by the Phoenix fiasco to file a class action lawsuit. It doesn't make sense that federal employees who are simply seeking what they are owed would have to go before the courts or file a grievance, which is long and costly. it's complicated to deal with this issue. When will the government compensate all federal employees for the damages, the emotional and psychological damages due to Phoenix? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to my honourable colleague for her question. Solving the problems associated with the Phoenix pay system is really our #1 priority. We obviously are facing technological challenges, and all I can say is that we will not be commenting on any cases before the courts. But what I can say is I can reassure federal employees that we will be taking care of these issues and we will be fixing the problems caused by the previous government.
Order. The House will be suspended for a few minutes to the call of the chair.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. J'ai été...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was interrupted by colleagues across the way, but I was saying that we can reassure public servants that solving the problems associated with Phoenix is our biggest priority. We are dedicating human, technological resources to this issue. I know that there's a case before the courts, which I cannot comment on, but what I can say is that we will be solving the problems associated with the Phoenix fiasco, which was left to us by the previous government. We will be dealing with the Phoenix pay system for the good of Canadians and of our federal employees.
Well, Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Quebec Superior Court handed down a very important ruling for workers burnt by the Phoenix fiasco. This ruling allows them to file a class action lawsuit against the federal government for damages. But this process will be long and expensive. In Budget 2018, the Liberals committed to compensating all federal public servants for psychological and emotional damage they have suffered. Workers have waited long enough. Instead of fighting them in court, will the government compensate all workers now?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I thank my honourable colleague. The problems associated with the Phoenix pay system, of course, were not created by this government, but we are determined to resolve those problems. That's why we are putting the utmost priority on devoting financial, human, and technological resources to fixing that problem. We cannot comment on a case that is before the courts, but what I can reassure all public servants in Canada is that we will fix the problems associated with the Phoenix pay system and avoid repeating the problems that were left to us by a government that neglected them. Thank you very much.
Order. Members, I think, should know that it's not appropriate to challenge the chair or to ridicule decisions of the chair. And with that in mind, and assuming it won't happen in the future, I go to the honourable member for Carleton.
Mr.
Speaker, this government has blacked out the numbers related to the cost of the carbon tax on middle-class Canadians. But they could tell Canadians today, they could end the carbon tax cover-up and tell the truth. How much will this carbon tax cost the average Canadian household?
Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, in 2015, Canadians made a choice. They chose a government that understands that the environment and the economy go together. Let me talk about the costs. The cost of climate change by 2020 will be over $5 billion a year to Canadians. Let me talk about the economic opportunity. It's $30 trillion. Wow. Why doesn't the Conservative government, the Conservative opposition that understands full well that we need to grow our economy while protecting our environment, do the right thing? Put a price on pollution, create the investments in public transit, investments in energy efficiency, the investment in Canadians.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
Well, the question was how much this carbon tax would cost the average family. We know that through the Finance Department's document that the costs will, quote, cascade throughout the economy. It will raise grocery bills, home heating bills, gasoline costs at the pump, and in thousands of other ways force Canadian families to pay more. So will the government end the carbon tax cover-up and indicate how much will the average family be forced to pay for this carbon tax?
Honourable Minister of Environment.
Mr. Speaker, interestingly, the document in question was prepared in 2015 before our government came to power. So I assume the party opposite knows the answer. We don't do ATIPs, our public servants do. We don't interfere in them. The previous government, I'm sure, knows that putting a price on pollution makes sense. It's a way to reduce pollution, increase innovation, and grow our economy.
Order. The member for Carleton.
In question was produced the day after the last election when finance officials were calculating how much the Liberal plan to impose a carbon tax would cost Canadians. They produced a briefing document on income deciles to determine how much people would have to pay for the carbon tax. Now, this government is in continued possession of that document, and surely they've done other calculations since. So, simple question. How much will the carbon tax cost the average Canadian family?
Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, 80% of Canadians live in a jurisdiction where there's a price on pollution. And let me tell you what's happening there. They're the fastest growing economies in the country. Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec. We need to take action on climate change because climate change is real.
That's right.
There is a real cost. And I would wish the party opposite would understand that we need to leave a more sustainable future to our kids, and we also need to make sure they have good jobs, and that goes together, so get with the program.
Honorable Député.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent.
Carleton.
Monsieur le Président, le gouvernement.
Mr. Speaker, the government has documents indicating how much it will cost for middle-class families. They calculated how much it would cost. So why keep this secret rather than ending the secrets and revealing it? I call on the government to reveal how much the carbon tax will cost for a typical family.
Before I go to the Honourable Minister of Environment, I remind the Minister to direct her comments to the Chair. The Honourable Minister of Environment.
Alors, Monsieur le Président.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as the member across the way knows, it is up to provincial governments to decide how they will put that price on pollution. I'll take the example of BC. What did BC do? They put a price on carbon and then gave the money from the revenue back to people. So we can invest in clean technology, and it's up to provincial governments to do that. I encourage the member opposite to talk to the Conservative government of Manitoba, which recognizes that we need to put a price on carbon.
Well, it will be news to anyone who's read 200 pages of the recent government budget that the provinces will decide what the price on carbon will be. In fact, it is this government which is imposing that price, a $50 a ton price nationwide, so it is not a provincial decision. And every time a budget bill is introduced, finance officials do the calculations on what it will cost Canadian taxpayers, which means this government has those numbers. So once again, how much will an average Canadian family pay under this new nationally mandated Liberal carbon tax?
Honourable Minister of Environment.
But it is up to provincial governments to determine what to do with the revenues from carbon pricing. They can return the revenues in a tax cut. If you like tax cuts, then you should support putting a price on pollution and returning it directly back to people. Maybe you want to invest in innovation. I'm not sure the party opposite does, but if you wanted to invest in clean innovation, you could do that. There is a huge price on pollution right now. I have 3 kids. Kids are demanding that we take action to protect our environment and create good jobs. I really wish the party opposite would do that.
Honourable member for Carleton Trail, Eagle Creek. Honourable member for Carleton Trail, Eagle Creek. Honourable member for Carleton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it will be further news to the Premier of Saskatchewan that provinces have full discretion about this carbon tax, as the minister has just indicated. Rather, he's been forced to go to court to fight against this government's national imposition of a carbon tax. And ironically, the participants in that lawsuit will be deprived of information on what the tax will cost. For the sake of our legal system, will they at least reveal how much the average Canadian family will have to pay in taxes?
The Honourable Minister of Environment.
I don't know how much more clear I can be. It is up to provinces to determine what to do with the revenues. Right. So the province of Saskatchewan is well within its right to take the revenues and do a tax cut, to take the revenues and reduce their PST. They could make investments in innovation. And in fact, it actually would help in Saskatchewan, where they use carbon capture and storage. It would incent people to use that technology. It would be cheaper and would allow made-in-Saskatchewan solutions like we are doing across the country. We are going to grow a clean economy. The
Honourable member for Carleton.
All right, Mr. Speaker, this question is for the Justice Minister. This Justice Minister will be appointing lawyers to fight Saskatchewan and the people of Saskatchewan in the court of law. Obviously, people from that province are standing up and fighting for their rights and opposing this nationally imposed carbon tax. So, the Justice Minister will be heading up the litigation. Will she provide evidence to the court so that they can carry out a proper deliberation on how much this carbon tax will cost the average Canadian?
Honourable Minister of Environment. Order.
Mr. Speaker, putting a price on pollution is well within the right of the federal government. But we want to work with provinces and territories. We want to build a cleaner future. We want to make sure we grow a clean economy. And this is the opportunity. I don't understand why the party opposite refuses to see this. We are in the clean growth century. Clean solutions will create good jobs. The innovation we do in Canada, in Saskatchewan, in British Columbia, in Ontario are innovations that we can use across the country and across the world to build a more sustainable future, to grow our economy.
I remind the honourable member for Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies, and other members that it's not appropriate to be interrupting when someone else is speaking. Honourable member for Battleford's Lloydminster.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals continue to strong-arm Saskatchewan. They refuse to recognize that this carbon tax will have a devastating impact on my province. The Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan has said the federal government does not understand basic agricultural economic realities. Farmers will be unable to pass along the interest to their increased costs to their customers. Yet the government continues to threaten the province, and now they have landed themselves in court. When will this Prime Minister stop being a bully and quit forcing a tax on Saskatchewan?
Honourable Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've made very clear, it is well within the right of Saskatchewan to make a tax cut, putting money back into the pockets of the people of Saskatchewan. And then we can reduce pollution and put money back in the pockets. And you know what? I go to Saskatchewan and I see the amazing innovation in the agricultural sector. Farmers get it. They are seeing the droughts. That is impacting on their crops. But they know how to do zero-till agriculture, climate-resilient crops. All these innovations that we are able to export to the world and create jobs right in Saskatchewan.
I'm having trouble hearing the answers when members like member for Yorkton Melville and others are yelling throughout the answers. Order. Honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, this is no opportunity. This Liberal carbon tax punishes farmers and rural communities. APAS President Todd Lewis said carbon taxes do not work. Producers cannot pass on the increased costs, and the federal government has no idea about this basic economic reality. Saskatchewan is unique. It has a climate change strategy that will work for us and it will work for agriculture. We should not have to go to court to protect that. Liberals are running roughshod over the provinces where the economy is still working. How can the Minister of Public Safety look his constituents in the face as his government's carbon tax drives them right out of business?
Honourable Minister of Environment.
I will continue to try to explain basic economics. Putting a price on pollution is a conservative concept. It's putting a price on what you don't want, pollution, so what you get, what you do want, innovation. The government of Saskatchewan can take the price on pollution, put it back in the pockets of farmers. Farmers are feeling the impacts of climate change. They are seeing droughts. They are seeing flooding. That is impacting on their crops. We all are in this together, and I wish the Conservative Party would join us too.
Alors, l'honorable député de Beauce, c'est très bien.
Order. The honourable member for Beauce.
Je sais qu'honorable.
I know that the honourable member for Beauce respects the question period in the House of Commons, and so I would ask him not to yell during the answers.
Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Natural Resources often stands in this House and proclaims that the Kinder Morgan pipeline will be built. But his own ministerial panel on Kinder Morgan posed this question: how can you square the impact of this project with Canada's climate action commitments? Yes. Now, since the economy and the environment go hand in hand, can he stand here and proclaim that Canada will meet its 2030 Paris climate targets, and if not, why not?
Honourable Minister of Environment.
Mr. Speaker, we understand the environment and the economy go together. Unfortunately, we have one party on this side that doesn't want to protect the environment, the party on this side that doesn't want to grow the economy. Right. We understand that we can do both. When we made the decision to approve the Trans Mountain expansion, we made sure that we were protecting the environment, that it fit within our climate plan, that we were protecting our oceans, and we also recognized the huge opportunity to create jobs in Alberta, British Columbia, and across the country.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Thank you,
Robert.
Mr. Speaker. It looks like we have two pipeline ministers. Today, the government of British Columbia has submitted a reference question to the BC Court of Appeal. It seeks to affirm its constitutional rights to protect BC from the threat of a diluted bitumen spill. Will the federal government join this new case? If not, why not? And if so, why then did the government refuse to launch its own reference case regarding federal jurisdiction in this matter? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
We are very confident that this pipeline is within federal jurisdiction. We have heard this answer from many courts for a long time, including the Supreme Court of Canada. The movement of natural resources from one province to another is a federal responsibility, and this government took a decision because this was in Canada's interests. And members know that the jobs that will be created, the expansion of our export markets, the better price we will get at the same time that we spend an historic $1.5 billion on an ocean protection plan is a policy that many Canadians...
The honourable member for Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, we all know Canada is a leader in research, science, creation, and invention. But when it comes to commercialization of the innovation, we tend to struggle. In my past experience, I've seen this many times. We invent and create, but can never recap the rewards of our hard work. For Canadian businesses to grow and create good, well-paying jobs, they need the ability to turn their new ideas into new goods and services that can compete in the world market. Mr. Speaker, my question to the Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development is, what is your government doing to improve the current situation? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member from Richmond Hill for all the advocacy and the hard work he's done as a member of the Indo Committee, promoting intellectual property and talking about the importance of technology transfer. It's a very important question he asked on World IP Day, and we understand, and the member is right, we're really good on science and research, but we can and must do better when it comes to commercialization. And that is why I'm proud to say that our government officially launched the first national IP, intellectual property strategy today. This strategy will help create a college of patent and trademark agents. It'll bring firms together for more patent collective to help them deal with international issues.
Member for Medicine Hat, Cardston Warner.
Mr. Speaker, last year we saw 50,000 people cross illegally into this country, and experts say this year's even going to be worse, with 300 to 400 illegal border crossers a day expected at Quebec alone. Law-abiding immigrants and refugees are now stuck waiting months or even years longer, while illegal border crossers cut in line. Now, how is that fair? Canadians are sick and tired of this government doing nothing but throwing more of their money at this crisis. When will the minister finally act to shut down illegal border crossings?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
We've taken a responsible approach. We've invested more money into border security operations. We've invested more money into refugee processing so that claims can proceed faster. Those who are deserving of refugee protection get to stay, and those who do not get to be removed faster. In fact, the members opposite are on record calling for more resources to be put into refugee processing. I hope they can join us because that's exactly what we're doing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Medicine Hat, Cardston Warner.
The illegal border crossing problem was created entirely by the irresponsible tweet of this Prime Minister. The government could have fixed the issue, but continues to be put on the back of hardworking Canadians and legal immigrants who pay that price. It's been over a year, and there is still no Liberal plan except to continue to throw millions of tax dollars at the problem. In fact, the only potential solution that was brought forward so far came from this side of the House, Mr. Speaker. When will this government give Canadians their plan to deal with this crisis?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
We do have a plan. It's called the National Contingency Plan. It's been developed together with provinces. It has a regionally specific focus. We've been working very closely with Quebec and other provinces in the Intergovernmental Task Force. What is irresponsible is for that party to pretend that they care about border security operations when they cut almost $400 million from CBSA. What is irresponsible is for that party to talk about queue jumping and all that when they had a terrible record with respect to processing of asylum claims and family reunification and all of that. They have an abysmal record, Mr. Speaker.
I'm sure the honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot is familiar with the standing orders, no doubt, and knows about the rule against interrupting and won't do so in the future, I hope. Député de Charlebourg.
Now a member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, whatever the minister says, there's chaos at our borders with the U.S. The work of CBSA officers is constantly being undermined by our Pollyanna Prime Minister. If he doesn't like our current border laws, he can change them. But meanwhile, he's responsible for restoring order at Saint-Bernard-de-la-Colle. What is the Prime Minister's plan? The minister said there was a plan. What is the plan to stop illegal crossings?
Mr. Speaker, the government has two prime objectives. One is ensuring that all Canadian laws are fully enforced. The second is to ensure that all Canadian international obligations are fully honoured. We have succeeded on both those fronts to date, thanks to the excellent work of the RCMP and CBSA and the Department of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Budget 2018 provided an extra $173 million to ensure that we can continue to succeed in this endeavor. And I want to congratulate all of the officers who do such extraordinary work in protecting our borders.
The honourable member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, despite the minister's answer, the minister says there's a plan, but no plan has been tabled. We called for a plan. There's no plan. There's no funds earmarked. People are still crossing on Roxham Road. What is the plan? We want to know what the Prime Minister's plan is.
Those who approach our borders need to understand that irregular crossings are not a free ticket to Canada. If you cross in that manner, you will be arrested and questioned. You'll be identified both biographically and biometrically. You'll be checked against Canadian and U.S. databases for any immigration, criminal, security flags that exist. You'll be required to prove that you have a legitimate asylum claim, and if you cannot prove that, Mr. Speaker, you will be removed from Canada to your country of origin. That's what Canadian law requires, and that's what we will deliver.
This is my country of origin. Member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Mr. Speaker, women with mental health or cognitive-related issues are 4 times more likely to report experiencing sexual violence. Now, the government's response to this shocking reality has been with Bill C-65 and social development programs. This is woefully inadequate due to the harsh reality, and I'd like to hear the government explain to us today why they're not taking this issue seriously and what are they actually going to do now.
Honourable Minister of Employment.
Well, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the question, and we share the members' horror at the experience that women have every single day in this country with gender-based violence. That's why, as the former Minister of Status of Women, I was so honoured to be part of creating the very first federal gender-based violence strategy, which we have funded to the tune of at least $100 million, with more in Budget 2018. My colleague, Minister Monis, the Minister of Status of Women now, is currently working with grassroots organizations to ensure the full implementation of the gender-based violence strategy. And yes, Bill C-65 is historic legislation in that it will provide protection for federally regulated workers and people.
Now, a member for Longueuil, Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, Europe, Japan, Australia, and many other countries are making internet giants pay their fair share. Quebec is about to do the same, and all Quebecers have been calling on the federal government to do the same for months. But you know who's just joined the group? The Standing Committee on International Trade, with its Liberal majority, has just recommended that internet giants be subject to tax and that they charge sales tax. And this is to be discussed at the G7. We're the last country to do nothing. What is going to be done? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Trade Minister. Mr. Speaker, we know that taxing internet giants is an important issue, but we want to take a balanced and fair tax approach. We want to encourage an innovative economy, and that's why the minister is working with OECD partners, and they have undertaken to find a joint approach instead of a piecemeal approach, and that is what we intend to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately for the workers in Grand Bank, their Liberal connections don't run deep enough for them to keep their jobs. The town has even had to hire a company here in Ottawa to raise awareness on the issue because their Liberal MPs have remained silent. So let's refresh. The minister gave a lucrative surf clam quota worth millions to his friends who didn't have a company, they didn't have a boat, and they didn't have multiple First Nations partners. So, Mr. Speaker, since the Liberal MPs from the Rock won't ask the question, can the Minister of Environment please tell the hardworking families of Grand Bank how much your carbon tax is going to cost them?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Fisheries.
I want to thank the member from Bonavista Beer and Trinity, actually, who has met with the minister often to talk about this issue and others. The fact that there is a new participant in the surf clam fishery should be no surprise to the Conservatives. In fact, they started a process 3 years ago to accomplish the very same thing. The difference is, unlike the previous government, our robust process included Indigenous communities. We are proud that the best proposal was selected and that the greatest number of Atlantic Canadians will benefit, including Indigenous partners from across 5 different provinces.
Honourable member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's disastrous trip to India continues to have serious consequences for Canada. Canadian exports of pulses have plummeted by 80%, jeopardizing the very survival of this $4 billion industry. Things are going from bad to worse. The Indian government has just announced a 3-month ban on yellow pea imports. Canadian producers are sick and tired of paying for the Prime Minister's false accusations. What's it going to take for him to apologize? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Colleague's question, a bit surprised, but I appreciate it. We are aware of India's moves on pea imports, but for a party that the only agricultural idea that I heard from them was how to end supply management, I'm surprised that they would ask the question. Mr. Speaker, we have and will continue to make sure that supply management thrives in this country.
The honourable member. Order. The honourable member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's conspiracy theory has destroyed our trading relationship with India. Canadian pulse producers are already facing 50% duties, and now India has imposed basically a 3-month ban on yellow pea imports. Our pea exports to India are down 80%, putting a $4 billion pulse industry at risk. When will the Prime Minister apologize to the Indian government? Because you know who is paying for these false accusations? Canadian farmers.
Minister of Agriculture.
And again, I am surprised, but pleased that he has some interest in the agricultural sector. We have and will continue to work with the Indian officials to rectify this situation. But I would ask my honourable colleague and critic to make sure that his party supports supply management, because supply management is vital to the agricultural sector. This government has and will continue to support supply management.
Remind the other member for Battle River Crowfoot, the member for Abbotsford, that the time to speak is when they have the floor, not at other times. The member for Vancouver Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is hosting G7 countries throughout 2018 and at the Leaders Summit discussions in June in Charlevoix, Quebec. Now, the empowerment of women is at the head of this agenda, and it's critical in these talks. Since the empowerment of women can achieve global peace, it can achieve economic empowerment, and it can assist economies in becoming more inclusive and more generous. Now, can the Minister of Status of Women tell us what she is doing at these talks to bring about gender-based analysis and gender analysis plus?
Well, Minister. Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Vancouver Centre for her question and for her tireless advocacy. Advancing gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls is a top priority for Canada's 2018 G7 presidency. This week, 2 key meetings of feminist leaders, the Gender Equality Advisory Council and the Women's 7, W7, were convened in Ottawa. Through their work, Mr. Speaker, grassroots and feminist voices from various backgrounds will help G7 leaders identify the most pressing issues facing the world's women and girls. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, media are reporting that the Prime Minister is weaponizing the Public Affairs Division of the Canadian Armed Forces. Our military is not a weapon for the Prime Minister to use against members of the media and opposition MPs who criticize and disagree with his government's failing Liberal defence policies. When will the Prime Minister stop using all the resources of the federal government to attack anyone who criticizes the Liberal government or has legitimate questions for him?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, our government is very proud of the new defence policy. We're focusing on people. We're going to have a 70% increase in the defence budget by 2025, Mr. Speaker. And we want to make sure that as we consulted Canadians across this country, we want to make sure that this defence policy is also now make sure that we communicate this defence policy to Canadians because it was developed by them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, member for Sherbrooke. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to see the Prime Minister has finally raised his concerns about Raif Badawi's imprisonment with the King of Saudi Arabia. And I thank him for that, but there's still a lot of work to be done before he can be reunited with his family in Sherbrooke. Granting him honorary Canadian citizenship might give the government more leverage to bring about his release. Since being jailed, Mr. Badawi has received prestigious awards, recognitions, and expressions of support from all around the world. It's time Canada did its part. Will the government grant honorary citizenship to Mr. Badawi? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, this week the Prime Minister spoke to the King of Saudi Arabia to express his serious concerns about the imprisonment of Raif Badawi. We called for leniency. We are continuing to work with his spouse. She's a strong and courageous woman, and our goal is to see Mr. Badawi reunited with his family, and we will continue to make every effort to achieve that goal. The Honourable Member for Laurentides-Labelle. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rail safety is a concern for people all across Canada. That's why the Transport Minister launched the Rail Safety Improvement Program. This program funds safety improvements to existing track and level crossings and initiatives to raise Canadians' awareness about rail safety issues across Canada. Can the Minister update the House on how this program is progressing and whether there are any obstacles standing in the way of its important goals? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Minister of Transport. I'd like to thank my colleague from Laurentides-Labelle for his question and his excellent work on committee. Of course, rail safety is my top priority. I'd also like to mention that on March 22nd, we all voted here in favor of funding for a number of projects, including the one he just mentioned. Luckily, the government passed that, but the Conservatives under Harper voted against it, and we really don't understand why. They're putting partisan interests above Canadians' safety. Mr. Speaker, I really don't understand.
For Banff Airdrie.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are telling small family-run businesses like campgrounds that they're too small to be a small business. They're faced with crippling new tax bills, yet the minister keeps over and over saying that nothing has happened, nothing's changed. But it was the Liberals that ended a review that would have restored access to the small business tax rate for these small businesses. Even several of her own Liberal colleagues, including the Minister of Fisheries, agree that these tax increases are completely outrageous. So will the Liberals finally stop their attack on small family campgrounds and fix this ridiculous problem?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, our government recognizes the significant contribution small business makes to job creation and growth of the middle class. I'd like to point out that we haven't changed the tax rules, and the same provisions continue to apply. Over 20,000 small and medium-sized businesses examined by the agency that are actually this type of business were affected. When the opposite party was in power, the government decided to change. This government decided to change nothing. The Honourable Member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, according to the IRB, asylum seekers may have to wait up to 11 years for a decision. Last week, Ottawa promised a triage system, a new triage system for this week. We're still waiting. The question is simple. When's it going to be? Honourable Minister of Immigration. Canada is an open and welcoming country for people in need of protection. However, our government is determined to provide for a proper system.
The processing of the IRB. Prior to this, the Immigration Refugee Board had achieved a 40% increase in its productivity rate. We're working very closely with Quebec to make sure that we look at all options on the table with respect to faster processing of work permits, triaging people away from Quebec to other parts of Canada when they wish to do so. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Député de Montcalm. The Honourable Member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, our resources are overstretched. The situation's untenable at customs, at Roxham, in shelters. They're all overwhelmed. The minister promised a new triage system. 8 days later, nothing's changed. The question is straightforward. When's it going to be? The Honourable Immigration Minister.
The important question. He'll be happy to note that we're continuing to work with Quebec and Ontario to put together a triaging system. Some asylum seekers who have received work permits have indicated a desire to live in other parts of Quebec. Others are going to Ontario, so we're working on those plans. We have meetings and calls in place to ensure that that plan has worked through all the eventualities. We will continue to be engaged on this issue. We've invested in border security operations and the Immigration Refugee Board.
L'honorable member for Pierre Boucher, les Patriotes Verchères. Well, I guess it's not going to be tomorrow morning. Mr. Speaker, the City of Montreal has just passed a unanimous resolution opposing the Chalk River Nuclear Waste Storage Facility project. 1 million cubic meters of radioactive waste, if there's a leak, could contaminate the Ottawa River and then the St. Lawrence. Nuclear waste management is serious business, and Quebecers really don't feel like getting poisoned. Is this government aware of the risk? Will they undertake to put the kibosh on this dangerous project? The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Protection of the environment are our top priorities with respect to nuclear waste management. As a result of robust participation by Canadians in the review process, the proposed near-surface disposal facility at the Chalk River Labs will only house low-level material to ensure its safe, secure, and long-term storage. The environmental assessment conducted by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission will look at every aspect of the project to examine any potential impacts. The public will be engaged.
I believe the Honourable Opposition House Leader has the usual Thursday question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, that was a rather humdrum question period. I'm sure you were wishing it could go on and on. So in the spirit of that, I will just ask the Government House Leader if she could please let us know what's going to be happening for the rest of this week and next week. Thank you very much.
House Leader, order.
Mr. Speaker, today we will continue with debate on the NDP opposition motion. Tomorrow we will take up report stage and third reading debate of Bill S5, the Tobacco and Vaping Products Act. On Monday we will commence report stage debate of Bill C48, the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act. Mardi prochain.
Next Tuesday will be an opposition day. Wednesday we will move to report stage and third reading of Bill C21 on borders.
Mr. Speaker, discussions have taken place between the parties, and if you seek it, I think you will find unanimous consent for the following motion. That, notwithstanding any standing order or usual practice of the House, following question period on Wednesday, May 9th, 2018, the House resolved itself into a committee of the whole in order to welcome the athletes of the 2018